My Soul to Take is written, directed, and produced by Wes Craven, and I'm continuing my Wes Craven series of reviews throughout the month of October. October has almost finished, so I'm going to try and watch as many horror movies over these next couple of days and over the next week. I'm going to try and review as many of them. As I said in my High Tension review, I do have a Trick or Treat review coming and a Halloween. They're two movies I do want to review next week, but and like I said, as I said in my High Tension, it all depends on timing and and what I'm doing and all of that. But anyway, so let's talk about My Soul to Take because I haven't actually talked about a Wes Craven film yet. Like as far as directing goes, I haven't. I've talked a lot about his producing work with Pulse and writing because he wrote Pulse. His producing work with with Wishmaster and The Breed. And so I haven't talked about his directing film. And My Sort of Take was one of Wes Craven's last films he did, I believe, but before he left us. So let's talk about My Soul to Take. So I'm going to start off by talking about the positives. And the biggest positive I can give to My Soul to Take is the gore. This movie is a lot more gory than I remember it being. And it's been a while since I've actually seen this movie. It's been at least a year or two since I've actually seen this, maybe less. But yeah, it's been a while since I've actually seen it. And this movie is a lot more violent and bloody than I remember it being, and it's mostly all practical, and it looks really good on screen. That's my biggest positive I can give to this movie because everything else in this movie is either just mediocre or average. So, moving on to my next positive, which would be the acting. Everyone in this movie is good. No one is bad in this movie. I didn't see a bad performance in this movie. I thought everyone gave a believable enough performance. Give a performance of what you would expect from their type of character because all the students in this movie, the main characters, the main focus of this movie, they're all high school students. So it's like they give a performance of what you would expect from a high school student. And each character in this film, they're all connected in one way, and they all come from a past that is, let's say, haunting them. Because our main character, Bug, for example, he was cut from his mother's womb. One of the 7 Riverton kids carries a bad soul, which contains the Ripper, which kills all of the other Riverton kids. And by the end of this movie, everyone else is dead. And the last two standing is Bug, who's our main character, who's our main focus, he's kind of the harmless one in this group. He comes from a troubled past where he didn't know his dad growing up, and he only found out at the end of this movie that his dad was the Ripper. Like every other Riverton kid who was born and raised, like they know that their dad is the Ripper, and the whole lore and the whole story built behind the Ripper is. At the opening of this movie, you see their dad, and he's switching back and forth between like multiple souls. Like the souls he has killed, he's kind of switching back and forth behind them. Like he has one soul telling him to do this, do that, and then he's trying to stay in control. And all that. The night of his death, he swore that he would return to murder the 7 children born on the night of his death. And then we cut to 16 years later, and we see the 7 children that were born that night 16 years ago. And as I said before, one of them has a bad soul containing the Ripper, the one who's been causing all the murders going down, who's murdered all of the other 7 children. Throughout this film, and I thought that was an interesting layer to this movie. I think the opening scene was very effective. I think it's a good looking movie, and it's a well shot movie as well. And the direction is decent in this movie. This is certainly not Wes Craven's best. And I feel like why this movie failed is because of the Ripper. I feel like that's one of, like, as much as the Ripper has an interesting enough story in this movie, I feel like why Freddy Krueger, I'm going to use him as an example because he is another one of Wes Craven's creations. Freddy Krueger, he has many layers to him. He has it's an interesting design, like the whole black and red sweater to the glove to the whole design and face texture and makeup and the whole look and all of that. It's all so iconic, and we know who Freddy Krueger is because he's such an interesting character. He's just a guy with a knife, and he kills his victims really quickly. But Freddy, like, he was sinister, but he had this smart ass to him as well that made him memorable. And Robert Englund certainly brought that character to life, and Robert Englund is certainly the most entertaining part of all of the sequels, which I don't think will ever be as good as Wes Craven's original classic. All the Ripper does is stab, 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 and he doesn't really talk a whole lot. Like, I just found him a very uninteresting villain. Like, outside of his story, even his story, there's not like a whole lot to offer there. Like, there's enough to offer there to at least be somewhat interested in him, but I just felt like with Freddy Krueger, for example, like, there's so much more, so many more layers to Freddy that makes him interesting. For the Ripper, I just didn't really find him all that interesting. Yeah, that's a little nitpick I have. I still think, like, there are a few shots in this movie where the Ripper, like, is in the distance and then he runs towards his victims. Like, those scenes, like, are scary somewhat. Like the bridge scene. Like, I think that's one of the best scenes in this movie. And I think the pool scene, I think that is probably my favorite scene in this movie. So, like, the Ripper, it's like when he's doing what the Ripper does, it is entertaining, but I didn't really find him all that interesting. All that aside, let's talk about the negatives. And my biggest negative with this movie is its characters. Outside of the good performances, the characters aren't all that interesting. Bug is probably our most interesting character in this movie, since he is our main focus. A lot of the screen time is on Bug, but even saying that, his character isn't all that interesting. There's not really much to Bug. There's not too much to learn. But if I had to choose one character, he's a character that has at least somewhat of a development. I just didn't find the characters in this movie interesting at all, because when characters started dying in this movie, I wasn't even sure who they were, because the film doesn't spend enough time for the audience to get to know them. They're only there to get killed by the Ripper, because this is a horror slasher movie. It needs to have some kills in it, and that's like honestly what I felt like they were used for. Because if you take these characters out, especially like the first character that dies, like what the hell was with that? Like he didn't, like that's the bridge scene. The bridge scene is where we get our first kill, and I will say that is a really good kill. But my problem here is like we didn't even know who this character is. Like he's on screen for like a minute and then he dies. And that's with a lot of characters in this movie. You know you have seen them on screen, but when they get caught by the Ripper and get killed by him, there's no emotion felt there. There's no like loss to the story. Characters just felt very watered down, and it's just like it's your average slasher movie characters. Obviously, we have the dickhead bully in this movie who's giving the main character a hard time. That is in every horror slasher movie ever. There's always going to be that dickhead character you want to get killed by the Ripper, and we have the main character's crush in this movie who he's too chicken to ask out. And it's like this movie follows that same character formula. Like we need the dickhead character, we need the main character's crush. Away from the characters, the ending is very convoluted. At first it makes no sense at all, but then it all starts to come out in the last 10 minutes of this movie, and we find out exactly who the Ripper is, who's been killing everyone this entire time, who's been dressing up as the Ripper to finish what their dad started 16 years ago. And because he has the evil one inside of him, he has the bad soul inside of him, and so he's been switching. He's been switching to this bad soul and dressing up as a Ripper and going around killing everybody and leaving investigations around for the police to find clues and to find dead bodies. A very minor negative. The dialogue is very clunky, and the script could have been handled a lot better in this movie. But besides all of that, I think this is a decent slasher film. It's obviously not like Friday the 13th great or Nightmare on Elm Street great, but as just a once-off slasher film, it was fine. I enjoyed myself. Like it did its job as being entertaining. There were some really well done sequences in this movie, like I said, the pool scene. I think was very well lit, and I think it was a very well directed scene in this movie. And so yeah, this movie isn't terrible. It's just like it's a letdown from a lot of Wes Craven, since he's built himself up as a really high director with movies like Hills Have Eyes, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like all you would expect is for this guy to go up, but this is just kind of like this is a low point for him. Has a good stuff in there, but this just isn't my favorite Wes Craven movie. So anyways, guys, let me know down in the comments, have you seen My Soul to Take? What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you think it was meh, or did you really not like it? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. So anyways, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, and night, wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye.